See, we had a very eclectic kind of upbringing, you know. We were an Arya Samaji family, not believing in Murti Puja, no temple going, just very simple, havan hota tha ghar mein. And we were right, you know, the mosque was, we were overlooking the mosque or the mosque was overlooking us. So वहाँ पे 5 वक्त की नमाज भी होती थी. But we were okay with the namaz. And then we went to the Catholic school and we were going to church.
Deepti ji doesn't need any introduction, right? But it's always good to, you know, ठहर के जरा पीछे मुड़ के देखें कि जिनसे बात कर रहे हैं उन्होंने किया क्या है. So this is just an opportunity to reflect back on her work, and I'm just here for that. So Deepti Naval ji is an Indian film actor, director, writer, painter, and photographer, a multifaceted personality. Her major contribution has been in the area of art and cinema, winning critical acclaim for her sensitive and close-to-life characters that emphasize the changing role of women in India. The first American Indian girl to join Hindi films. Deepti made her debut in the year 1980 with path-breaking film Ek Baar Phir, for which she won her first Best Actor award and since has appeared in many movies. I'm sure you guys have your favorites, including Cheshme Badur, Katha, Rang Birangi, Kisi Ne Kaha, Saath Saath, my very favorite movie, Ye Ishq Nahi Aasan, Mirch Masala, and many more films. Like recently, we saw her in NH10 as well, Listen Amaya, and she has other films coming up which she will talk about. Deepti ji was awarded Best Actor in several international film festivals for her roles in Leela, Firak, Memories in March, and Listen Amaya. She's also won Best Screenplay at the New York India Film Festival for her directorial film Do Paise Ki Dhoop, Char Aane Ki Barish. Deepti Naval was recognized as the 2007 Tribute Honoree of Indian Film Festival of Los Angeles. She wrote and directed Thoda Sa Asman, the women-centric TV serial, produced a travel show, The Path Less Traveled. Deepti ji has also done a poetic stage show, Ek Mulaqat, where she plays celebrated Punjabi writer Amrita Preetham. As a writer, her selection of poems, we have seen that with an Hindi Majde program called Lamha Lamha. Lamha Lamha was published in the year 1981. Her second book of poems, Black Wind, and other poems were published in 2004. The Mad Tibetan short stories from then and now was her first anthology of short stories published in 2011. She's also a painter, and if you see her website, you'll see her distinct expression, especially her landscapes, figures, self-portraits, and sketches. And today, we are all here to honor and to talk to her about her recently published memoir called A Country Called Childhood. So I request all of you with a round of applause, please invite on the stage Deepti Naval ji.
Thank you everyone. Thanks.
Deepti ji, welcome to Boston. We're very happy to have you here again.
Thank you, Sunana. Thanks.
Shakespeare has said, what is a name, right? But actually everything is in a name. So, Deepti ji, first question that I had, because this name of your book, I think some of you have seen this, you have the book called...
Sorry, वो मेरा चश्मा लगेगा ना? अभी very quickly I will need it.
We need light and...
Yeah.
Yeah. So my first question was, the name is very interesting, unusual, A Country Called Childhood. I wanted you to tell us a little bit about how did you pick that name and what made you name the book A Country Called Childhood.
Well, let's see. It's a metaphor. It came into one of the passages that I was writing. It just flowed in, you know. I was writing something like, I was describing the place where I grew up. My childhood was spent in Amritsar. So I was describing the ambience where we lived, the street on which, the people around, the neighborhood, and a little bit about the ambience. And then I said that these are the sights, smells, sounds from the place where I once, from the country I once lived in, a country called childhood. And it was part of the passage, and then the publisher, my editor, David R., he picked up. He said, this is going to be the title of your book. So I said, are you sure? He said, yeah, we're going to stick to that. That'll be the title of your book. So that's how it's used as a metaphor. It's like country means this very vast place, vast, where country that nurtures you, that forms you the way you are going to be in life. During your childhood, that's when you pick up everything. There is so much going on there. It's like a maze. It's like a collage of images and sights and sounds and faces and memories, everything put together. So I use it like a metaphor. Yeah.
Thank you, Deepti ji. So. अभी आपने बोला कि your childhood was spent in Amritsar. So your book is very visual and describes Amritsar in detail. Yeah. Take us to the Amritsar of your childhood.
I can read something from the beginning
Please.
Of the book. Yeah. I will read. Let me tell you a little bit. Okay. I will read my very first memory. It's called The Dance of Songs. Is there anybody here from the north of India? Punjab? Okay, a lot of people. Okay, good. Yeah, because in my book I do use a lot of Punjabi words, like for courtyard I say veda and thada and, little words that to just keep the flavor of the place where one grew up. It's getting dark in the city of Amritsar. Shops are shutting down. Street lamps come on, casting dim yellow pools of light. Rickshaws and bicycles hustle to make their way home. A handcart loaded with gunny bags wobbles down the street. Even Dwarka's kite shop is winding up. The old Sardar tailor pulls his rickety shutter down, gets onto his bicycle, and pedals away. Shani's voice can be heard. She's urging her buffaloes home. Grubby little boys, the mochis, play outside in the gully, and behind the threshold of the Phatak, the big iron gate, two little girls, Bobby and Dolly, go about their lives. This scene seems like it's from hundreds of years ago, but it actually dates back to 1956. It's one of my earliest memories in which I'm 4 years old. It's the street I remember the most, the street on which I lived. A little girl darts out of a house crying, I want to go to my mama. Come back, shouts my Sardi, my nanny, from inside the big gate. No, I want to go to my mama. Your mama has gone to the cinema. You get in here at once. I will also go to the cinema, she retorts and runs down the street. Suddenly, something stirs in the air. There's a muffled grunt in the sky and the breeze changes. The sky turns red. Tin sheds begin to flap and rattle. The smell of wind on earth. It's a dust storm. Stray pieces of paper littering the ground outside the bookbinder's shop fly up and float in the air. Bicycles fall in a slow, studied motion along the wall of the cinema hall. The wooden shutter of Gyan Halwai's shop tilts and slips out of its clamp. He stands with his arms outstretched, holding it with all his Malai lassi strength against the wind, his lungi threatening to fly off. A rickshaw puller pedals backwards and sideways. The world seems to slant at the edges. Dust storms the streets. My Sardi's voice cuts through the mayhem. Stop! I say, get back, girl, it's dark. The girl is not coming back. She runs all the way to the end of the street and suddenly finds herself in the middle of Katra Sher Singh Chowk, in front of Regent Talkies, surrounded by huge cinema posters. The posters begin to tear from the whiplash of the wind. Sar, sar. Faces of actors and actresses fold up and slap against the dry whitewash of the decrepit cinema. Unable to keep her eyes from the dust, wind, and tears, the little girl hides her face in her sleeve. At her feet swirl particles of dust, torn scraps of paper, bright orange and pink trimmings from the tailor's shop, and gather momentum. She stands still for a while, watching the little merry-go-round around her dotted rubber booties until her eyes fall upon something. Across the street, the plotwala is doing a tandav. He's the skinny man who sells little leaflets with the plot and songs of Hindi films printed on them. A strong gust whisks away the sepia-colored leaflets from his hands and flings them into the wind. They soar in the air, going up and up in circles, dodging the poor man's attempts to retrieve them. Tossed into the wind, the yellowed sheets somersault, now diving to his feet, now rising as if to sudden applause. He leaps and plunges by the side of the road, slapping his arms around, hurling himself at the musical notes. One leaf slips into two and two into four, till the songs dance above his gaunt, lanky frame. He dances with the songs, the poor plotwala, trying in vain to hang on to his only means of livelihood as it slips away into grainy air. No one notices the little girl as she stands in the middle of the chalk, enthralled by the dance of songs, her large eyes filled with tears, but she forgets to cry. There you are, Marjani. My Sardi steps forward, scoops me up in one sweeping movement, lodges me onto her hip, strides down the street, and puts me back inside the house where I belong. As we enter, my grandmother rises from her chair, pointing a finger at me. No little girls from good homes go out to cinemas on the street. Thank you. Thank you.
I was thinking about that halwai whose lungi was about to fly. It reminded me of Marilyn Monroe in Subway in New York. And Amritsar, the way you describe in your books feels like Harry Potter's Hogwarts. It's almost that visual, that magical, but real.
Yeah.
Deepti, I wanted you to go to this chapter in your book called Exodus from Burma. I want to set a context to this question first. The context is that a few years back when I was deciding to write my poetry, collect my English poetry books, and I was looking at a poem that I had written for my great-grandmother. So my great-grandmother was killed during the Exodus in 1947 when Kabylis attacked Kashmir. And all these years, and she was killed because she refused to give her jewelry box to them. And in the kids, it was a joke कि पर नानी ने भी अपनी jewelry नहीं दी तो हम किसी को अपनी jewelry कैसे देंगे? But over the years, if anyone would have asked me that who are your heroes, I always pointed out women outside like Indira Gandhi or other women that we looked up to, Amrita Pritam ji for literature. We'd never look within our families. The lives of these ordinary women who have done some extraordinary work. Now, when I looked at this chapter, and I looked at this story called Little Women and the Gramophone, it's on page 108. Mm-hmm. So I felt a connect there. I wanted you to talk a little bit about your great-grandmother and her.
See, it's not just this short story I wrote in my college in New York when I studied at Hunter. I have to give them some background about my family first. Sure. I can't just jump to the because thoda lost ho jayenge. Sure. My mother's family, my mother was born and brought up in Burma, and father's family came from Punjab, Amritsar. Father, of course, studied in Lahore. They came over during the partition. My mother's family was living in Burma when the Japanese invasion happened during the World War II. And the Indians had to flee. They had to flee Burma. There was this huge exodus of Indians from Burma. When they walked across the Assam and Nagaland and Manipur, the jungles of Assam and Nagaland, and they came across in Punjab, wherever they landed in Mukeria or, to India. And this is a very less talked about chapter in the history of Indian displacement. Pakistan के बारे में partition हुआ बहुत बात होती है, but when it comes to the Burmese Indians, how they fled and came into Burma by walking through the jungles, not much has been spoken about or written about. So people are surprised when the first time they find that there is such an extensive movement that happened, and actually they didn't know much about it. So when I went to my nani, she insisted, when they had to flee there, जब घर छोड़ना पड़ा, तो she said that I can leave everything behind, but I'm not going to leave my gramophone. So in New York, when I studied in my English class, the first essay that I ever wrote in class was called Little Woman and the Gramophone, and she wants me to read from that. Thoda sa hai marked ke, should I just read? What page is it?
108.
108. Do you know how much I can read if it's not going to be endless?
Right here.
I have it. I created a quasi-fictional account of my family's escape from Burma that is reproduced here, based very much on my nani's experience. Oh, Lashio, Lashio is the name of a place. Little woman turned to look back longingly one last time at the land she was going to leave behind forever. The land she so loved, the land she would always call home. Thanks. The land she so loved, the land she would always call home, the land she would never stop yearning for. Clad in a white cotton sari, a gramophone perched on her back, she stood at the precipice of Tamu Pass, the last checkpost that marked the border between Burma and India. The sun was going down behind the hills. As she began to walk along the path to Palel, the golden trumpet on her back, the horn of the gramophone shone in the setting sun. These were times of trouble. The year was 1942. The world was at war for the second time. 80,000 troops in Singapore had surrendered on 15 February. 8 days later, the British Indian brigades in Burma were crushed in the Battle of Sitang Bridge, a defeat that effectively left the path to Rangoon open to the Japanese advance. So here we go into Little Woman, how she's insisting कि वो लेके जाना है a gramophone. I'll skip some and I'll read some. Little woman clung to the walls of her bamboo house and wept bitterly. It was time to go. Leave everything behind, all her possessions, her home, her belongings, her vegetable garden, the creepers in the veranda, everything. Only the gramophone she would not leave behind. The gramophone she insisted on carrying with her on her back. Mummy, we cannot possibly carry this. Andrew looked aghast at his mother as she stood stubbornly next to the old-fashioned instrument which is with its oversized horn-shaped speaker. "You can't, I can," she said, pulling a white cotton cloth out of a cupboard and tying it around her waist. "Help me with it, Andrew. Just make a pouch of this cloth on my back and stick the trumpet in." "On your back?" Andrew stood horrified, gaping at his mother. "How can you? How can I let you do this?" The boy was at a total loss for words, but there was no time left to argue. The sun was quickly going down. The trucks were ready to go on the other side of the river. The elephants had lined up for more evacuees. Andrew could hardly walk, his own luggage weighing him down. He had little option left but to lift the gramophone and slide it into the cloth pouch and tied to his mother's back. Then for days they walk, and the nights in the jungle, and there comes a time when she's over fatigued and lost. I think she's lost here. She's looking for her family. She thinks the family thinks that she's gone ahead with the others, and she thinks they are behind her. Some confusion is there. She's lost. So here I say, I'm skipping, and I say, she took a long breath, stretching her body. With both her hands, she pulled the hair back from her sweaty forehead, knotting the long tresses into a bun at the nape of her neck. She looked at her sari, the pale white now almost brown from days and nights of plodding through the jungle. The maroon velvet Parsi border, hand-woven, had frayed along the edges, the delicate mulmul giving in to thorny shrubs and undergrowth through the trackless jungle. As darkness fell, she tried once more to call out to other members of her family, her voice frail and quivery. "Andrew, Brian, Sarah." Not one human sound came back. All was silent. She was probably not going to make it after all. Her family must be thinking that she was up ahead with the other women and children from the last camp, so no one would even come back looking for her. She was lost, for sure. बहुत है
I think we should,
मतलब आपने मुझे इस पे
हाँ.
डाल दिया, अब तो मुझे थोड़ा सा तो करना है. हाँ, okay, yeah. So she decides that she's lost and she probably won't make it. And to lift her spirits, she pulls the gramophone down and she starts to wind that. And then उसको वो घुमाने लगती है. And then she thinks of the time when the gramophone was brought into the house. Her husband, my Nana, had bought the gramophone from a Madrasi's shop in Mandalay, and how that gramophone had changed the lives of this family. There was music every evening. There was bhajans of Jutika Roy and Kanan Bala and so many other people, and they would listen to music and the house was filled, their lives was filled with music. And then I come back here. I come back to little woman, lost and footsore, had given up all hope of making it to the Indian border, even be rescued by her family. Having foot-slogged for days and now separated from her family, she was tired and full of despair. She needed music to lift her spirits. Without really thinking, she knelt down and began to crank up the gramophone so she could play a record. Slowly, she rotated the crank once, twice, and then again. Then she stopped, transfixed by the terrible sight of the animal that stood barely 20 feet from her, its eyes following her every move. All sounds of the jungle vanished. The breeze stopped. Beads of sweat erupted on her skin. Her small, fragile frame shook with fright. She stood frozen to the ground, only the low growl of the tiger reverberating through the pin-drop silence of the night. Slowly she began to straighten up, unable to get her eyes away from the tigers. This was the moment then, she thought, her heart pounding in her chest. This was the death people dreaded, being eaten alive by a wild tiger. The tiger looked at little woman straight in the eye, its gaze unwavering. Little woman couldn't tear her eyes away from the tiger and stood there petrified, trapped in a terrifying, fatal moment. She then shut her eyes tight as if she was going to die, but then she could not bear to see herself being mauled by the animal. All at once, there was an unexpected movement within the frozen tableau. The metal handle of the gramophone began to turn anti-clockwise. As that happened, the disc on the machine began to revolve. The needle lowered on the vinyl's glazed edge, an unbearable empty crackle. Then incredibly, music began to sound through the dying light. The notes from a cello, the bass starting up, an accordion, and then cutting through the terror and tension of the Death Valley, clear and high-pitched rose the voice of Jutika Roy. Bhed jiya ke khol man re, kahe na mujhse bol. Little woman stood motionless. She thought, if death is to be this moment, let it be accompanied by music. There was no other sound. There was no other sound in the wild forest, only the melodious voice of Jutika Roy. Kahe na mujhse bol. Little woman slowly opened her eyes. The tiger hadn't moved. Then, even as she watched, it turned its head slowly, took a lazy step to its left, and melted into the jungle.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So inspiring.
This is the kind of book, I mean, I often keep getting asked this question. Thank you. Yet, get this, I always run into this question कि आपने autobiography क्यों नहीं लिखी और बचपन के ही बारे में सिर्फ क्यों लिखा? So I always felt that it's difficult. I mean, it's because if I was not a writer, also along with being an actor, if I was not a writer, I probably would have settled for an autobiography. ये किया वो किया फिर कॉलेज गए फिर ये फिल्म कैसे स्ट्रगल स्टार्ट की ये किससे मिले कौन सी फिल्म उसके बाद कौन सी फिल्म मिली क्या नहीं हुआ I thought that was a little trite because autobiographies are a little predictable मालूम ही होता है but as a writer I thought what am I going to do as a writer what fascinates me the most and that turned out to be I wanted to share my childhood with the readers and transport the reader back to where I lived, what I lived, so that I could carry the reader with me through the corridors of memory, my memories, and not just tell you about it. हम ये भी करते थे, वो भी करते थे. Big deal. I thought, नहीं. I wanted to recreate my childhood for the reader. That's what was the purpose of my book. And I hope I've been able to achieve that.
So this is my personal observation of the book, what I was going through, and I may be wrong, that, some people, they like fiction, non-fiction, autobiography, storytelling, novel. But what I found in your book, I found everything. Like, you go chapter by chapter, the passage which you just read about, it's so thrilling, like if I am reading a very, thrilling novel about somebody's encounter.
It is written like a novel. That is...
That was my observation, actually.
Yeah, because I wanted to recreate everything. I just didn't want to tell. I wanted to show everything.
This is very interesting. I mean, it says a memoir, but the style of your writing, the way you have brought it up, it is fascinating. It's very, very, very visual, very visual.
That's what normally people have reacted to the book, saying it's very, very visual. It just, we just start living. आपके साथ ही हम लोग भी वहाँ पहुँच जाते हैं और हम भी मतलब वही सब और सबको अपने अपने बचपन की भी बहुत याद आती है इससे. I was telling you yesterday कि कैसे people are able to, it has taken everybody back into their childhood also. Of course, I haven't read those parts where I describe the mahalla, the masjid, behind the house, just, adjoining the house is this mosque, Khairuddin's mosque. And I would give you a little bit of that. That is, coming back to
one
your
phrase,
visual.
what you said about the childhood, one phrase I would definitely want to mention is Langar Deen Bajaye Been. You remember that?
Yeah, that's Hindu Bhaiya's
Yeah, that will
role
come.
in-
That would come. And I was so surprised because I don't know if you have used it. We have used it so much in our childhood. Langar Deen Bajaye Been. I mean, this is what the book is. It will take you to your childhood.
Yeah, before you ask me another, I know you're ready with a question.
No, I'm just.
But
I'm thinking of phrases, so I have.
हाँ, जैसे वो you said पिताजी का एक phrase होता था.
Good Mendi Lalte.
Yeah.
Good Mendi Lalte.
Yeah, my father used to say, when Piti, I used to call him Piti because बचपन से पिताजी थोड़ा सा कहना शायद I was a
Piti is a
toddler,
cool name.
so I called him Piti always. तो उनका favorite तकिया कलाम होता था Good Man the Lalten. तो जब वो खुश होते थे, या he would be tickled about something or amused or surprised, he would say, wow, good man the Lalten, तो वो बाद में मुझे Bombay, when I joined the industry and I was doing up my flat, I went to Chor Bazaar कि यहाँ कुछ interesting चीज़ें मिलेंगी. I was actually looking for old ship lamps to turn into hanging light or something. तो वहाँ पर मैंने देखा एक ship lamp मैंने उठाया और उसके ऊपर लिखा हुआ था Good Man. It was in British company called Goodman, and whether it was called Goodman or Goodman, but it was a British company and it was a lantern. As simple as that. So we don't have to rack our brains कि कहाँ से वो phrase आया होगा. It was just that name of that lantern. But of course it was also in Punjab also, with that generation, it was used as a metaphor also. Yeah.
Yeah, so if we can extend that metaphor, because Good Man the Lalten, once I read the book, I realized that it has other meanings too. If we can talk a little bit about your father, you said Piti, and a little bit about him.
I also want to give them a little description of, if you're okay with descriptions, I don't want you to run away. अरे यहाँ तो descriptions ही नहीं खत्म हो रही, मतलब वो नहीं होना चाहिए. So, yeah, my favorite chapter, I mean, there are many favorites, but this one is like dear to me because I have always been such a nature freak ever since I was a baby, I think, My parents were very adventurous. हर गर्मी की छुट्टियों में हमें कुल्लू ले जाते थे. So, we were always very close to nature. हर साल हम लोग जाते रहे और apart from that, नहर पे ले जाते थे Sundays को, नहर outings होती थी. तो when you're living within the walled city, any little stepping out with fields on both sides was a celebration, So it was nature, and so I also did react a lot from the beginning to nature. This chapter is called Neri Ai, Neri Ai. Neri is a storm, है ना? अंधेरी क्या बोलते? हाँ. Andheri, Andhi. I'll read a little bit, just be patient with me. A storm is brewing, a tin sheet rumbles in the wind, dark clouds roll over. Everyone runs to their terraces, rolls up mattresses and pulls them under cover. There's the scent of rain on earth. These are the images, sounds, smells I so remember like it was yesterday. Neri Ai was such a welcoming, thrilling soundtrack during those days when we lived in a country called childhood. What fascinated me most about the landscape of Punjab were the dust storms. I found them exciting, filled with mystery, creating a sensory experience that was hard to match. I loved the Neri, and I'd actually wait for it, almost certain that it would be followed by a torrid downpour of rain. They provided the element of drama to our everyday lives. Except for the grit that got into the eyes, experiencing a dust storm was thrilling, not least for the way in which it transformed the landscape. Suddenly, in the middle of the day, the sky would turn pink, then a deep magenta, and finally become pitch black as if the sun had been blown out. My eyes would brighten each time there was another ripple in the air and the wind started to howl. Black clouds rolled over the city, turning day into night, and yellow bulbs blinked to life, lighting up the streets. One particular dust storm when I was around 10 is etched in my memory. I'm on the terrace enthralled by the spectacle that is beginning to unfold. I see Jeet pulling off the clothes, flapping on the clothesline, her expression dark and inward. I hear a sharp crack of a whip, then a low hostile rumble, constant and unnerving. A stray kite caught in the electric wires starts to flutter. The sky reddens. The wind picks up, turns into a squall. Rickshaw pullers scramble about in the dust-stormed street. Scraps of paper whirl and tumble madly in the thickened air. I hear Mama's voice loud and clear. Deepti, come down at once. Why? Why did I have to go down when life was happening up here? I stay up on the Barsati, watching everything, and I wait. Brief gusts of wind move things around in the world. The tin sheets on the Barsati begin to rattle. A rat-tat-tat hammering provides a steady beat to everything else that is going on. The bedsheet on Didi's cot swells up in slow motion, then abruptly folds and turns over itself. The table lamp beside Piti's bed sways and rolls over onto the floor, spreading outward from the horizon. The sky, for as far as I can see, is an expanse of pink. I look across to the mosque. Beneath the dome, I see serried ranks of pigeons squeeze into themselves and wait, their feathers rising and falling in the wind. They huddle together. From the tumult all around, they know something is about to happen. Mama grabs, this is a bit of the scene at home. Mama grabs, my mother was a painter, my father was a writer. Mama grabs her oil sheets from the Veda and runs for cover. Bachchad aan wali hai, it's going to rain, says Piti. That word sends a ripple down my spine. Bachchad. Bachchad, the first shower the monsoon wind whips in. I think I can go on and on. Let me not do that. Let me. I can just. मैं अब खुद भी पहुंच गई हूँ अपने बचपन में ही. This is very dangerous.
You should let people read on their own.
There is an audience. Okay, tell me. So anyway, enough now. इसके बाद descriptions में.
I think.
Yeah, you want me to say. Can I ask you a question there? Because you said your mother was a painter and your father was a writer. You're a painter, writer. There's so many facets to that. So, what is the process of writing? Like when you're looking at something, it inspires you. It sits there, probably marinates for a while. So how do you compartmentalize? What's the process of writing? How do you decide कि ये कविता होगी, ये painting होगा, या short film होगी? ऐसे, like, is there a process to that?
I don't think I've ever really put that much of thought into it. I like to think of myself as a creative person who needs to say something, who needs to express herself, and whatever is at hand, whatever medium of expression is at hand, I am able to somehow, put myself into it fully and do my creative work. Of course, there has been times when I have made a painting. There is a painting called Black Wind. There is a painting, yeah. But after the painting, I said, now, to the viewer, what does it say? There's a girl standing in the balcony, there's a railing behind her, it's a monsoon night, it's very dark, and it's a stormy night, and this girl is very confused and very going through some kind of a turbulence in her head. So you can see that in a painting, but then I'm a storyteller, so I still need to tell the story. So I wrote a poem called Black Wind, despite having made the painting. तो कभी-कभी ऐसा होता है कि straight away you can say something in words, it comes out in words, and you feel yes, I've said it. But sometimes, जैसे कि role में भी होता है, sometimes you're performing, and in the middle of the scene you feel, oh my God, hasn't this, it's very uncanny, it has happened. This has happened with me. It has happened before. I've gone through this emotion, this kind of dialogue. Where has this happened? ऐसे कुछ feeling आती है. And sometimes, when something happens in real life, you feel, oh no, this I've gone through this in a scene, in a film. I've done this. I've been through this before. I've enacted this, and now it's happening in life. So there are these overlapping. Yeah, but that's a different kind. In the acting field, it's a different kind. Here what she's asking, what you're saying is that कब poem होनी है, कब painting बनेगी, कब क्या, तो उसका इतना hard and fast नहीं होता. I just go with what I feel. If I feel after doing some creative work, if I feel I haven't really said what I want to say, अभी और हाँ, तो then I think my last resort is writing. जब और कुछ काम नहीं आता तो फिर पेन और कागज पे वो.
I think I would take you back to the book, and so when I started that question about Piti,
पिताजी, हाँ.
I have selected a passage,
Okay.
and because every child, especially I think daughters, they resonate their father at some point in life.
Yeah.
And I would definitely want you to, just sketch a picture. And I mean, you can read of your choice, but I have marked
You
something.
marked it? कहाँ से?
122 and the third
Okay,
para.
from
Yeah, here.
From third para to the.
yeah. Piti grew up in Katra Kanhaiya, in the old walled quarter of Amritsar. In 1933, the family moved to the Chandravali house, our ancestral home, next to the mosque in Hall Bazaar. It was a very quiet street, said Piti. As my father described his time when they moved into this house. I have my own memories of the house, which I have already described in this book earlier on. He said it was a very quiet street. There were just a couple of shops in the entire length. 2 cycles would pass in the street and we'd think, Aaj bazaar vich raunak hai. Today, I think it's funny. Today, the bazaar is a buzz. My father was a very quiet, shy adolescent. The only son in the family, he grew up with 5 sisters. In a household teeming with girls, he gradually turned into a loner. From time to time, his male cousins from Africa, BBG's, my grandmother's brother's children, would come to visit. Doli, Kirki, Bindu were all strapping young boys, tall and statuesque. Compared to them, my father felt small and insignificant. In his later years, he told me that as an adolescent, he grew up with a complex about his looks and his physique. Though when I look at his portrait as a young man from his Lahore days, I feel he had rather nice features. But it had been ingrained in his mind that because he wasn't tall and fair complexioned like other Punjabi boys, he was not considered good looking. It wouldn't be until he was 13 that young Uday would come into his own. In fact, before that, my father went quite unnoticed in his own home. So there's, I speak about my mother. I speak, how father, of course, he was being a student of English literature, having grown up in Amritsar, but then for studies he went to Lahore Government College. Till the partition then brought everyone hurtling back to Amritsar, and my mother was studying art. BC सान्याल का नाम किसी ने सुना है? सान्याल स्टूडियो होता था लाहौर में. That's where my mother studied, and as I studied painting with other eminent artists. Now today they are very, very famous and well known. And that's the kind of it. The Lahore in their times was a very, very splendid city, full of art and culture and things happening, events all over. There was also the freedom movement bhi chal raha tha. So the people were very fired up. There was वहीं पे वो भी होती थी, तकरीरें भी होती थी. And my mother describes, of course, later on, as I was writing this book, I have been writing this book forever, actually. I have recorded innumerable tapes I have made, speaking to my father, my mama, and my relatives, and all kinds of cross-checking, and talking about how you wanted to know yesterday kitna kab likhi kitab kitna time laga. The last 5 years I have solely concentrated on the book and not taken up any acting assignments, not really ek do chhod ke. But actually the work started 20 years ago. 20 years ago, yeah. The first 4 chapters of the book were written that much earlier. And then of course the research started. It took me a long time to even put together what really happened in Burma, my mother's life there, what really happened in partition, kis family ke saath kya hua. I had to give both sides of the picture because I know that partition devastated all the communities, not just the Hindus this side or the Muslims that side. Everybody got wrapped up in this mayhem, and atrocities happened on both sides, and that was the truly tragic part of partition. So uske bare mein bhi it took me some courage to write and call a spade a spade. You have to be careful. You don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but partition is such a thing. Every family has their own history of partition. My father used to say, कोई पंजाब में कोई family नहीं है जिसमें partition की history नहीं है.
Actually, an author has to be, or a poet, a writer, creative aspect has to be, has to call a spade a spade. Otherwise,
Well, you're.
आपकी कहानी के साथ तो you have to be honest.
Yes, I had decided to write my book with immense honesty and make it as candid as possible so that people get the picture, they get the picture. Of course, I do say that there were things that happened.
I was thinking about earlier when you talked about your father and how he had complex.
You wanted me to read something else, Mom?
Before
we go into that.
There was one thing I wanted you to touch upon, how he became from that gentle Uday to Naval.
Oh yeah, I can just tell them.
Exactly.
Yeah. My father, because he was very enterprising as a young, he was a huge art enthusiast. He was not. My mother was the painter, but my father was a huge, art का बहुत उनको शौक था. He used to come out with a journal called Joy of Art. लाहौर में ही थे, student थे, तो बहुत थे enthusiastic about all these things. And he wanted, when he came back to Amritsar, and he wanted to start, start his working life, he changed his name to Naval. His original name was, my grandfather was called Pandit Gyanchand Sharma. So the family was Sharma. But when I asked my father, I said, where did you get this Naval from? He said, you know what? Everybody, I just didn't want to be another Sharma ji walking down the streets of Amritsar. जिसको देखो शर्मा जी, कोई एक शर्मा जी को आवाज दो तो 6-7 सर घूम जाते हैं. So he said I didn't want to. So Naval, which means new, he adopted that. It is not a surname at all. It is just like a pen name, but it became my surname, and so I've lived with it like a surname. ऐसा ही लगता है कि अब भाई है. And he had a streak of adventure, which was a bit uncanny, because I remember when we were kids, एक मैं किस्सा सुनाती हूँ पिताजी का. Once he got very fascinated with planchette. Yeah? So तो उन्होंने ना रात को, हमारा कमरा ऊपर होता था, सर्दियों के दिन में we never used to sleep downstairs. It was a huge house, 4 stories and big, a lot of terraces and many staircases going up and down. कहीं तो कहीं जाती भी नहीं थी, ऊपर बंद दरवाजे होते थे. So it was this huge place. और नीचे कमरा था. We would sleep upstairs in the room, in the Barsati room, and downstairs in the hall, my father would, with another friend of his, Sundarlal uncle कहते थे उनको, they would be practicing this. They would be playing planchette, and my mother would be livid. What is this? How can this? I mean, somebody of his education and his background with, I mean, कैसे? How can he indulge in things like this? I mean, what logic is this? How do you even believe that actually? I mean, it's not something which is होता भी होगा, शायद पता नहीं. But my father thought कि है spirit बुलाना है और उससे बात करना. तो one day upstairs in the room, upstairs him and Sundarlal uncle busy doing this planchette. Mama's upstairs, me and my sister, Didi and I, we are with her ऊपर के कमरे में. And Mama's saying, today I'm not. My mother went to a convent school in Burma, and her English was absolutely immaculate. She said, today I'm going to make sure the spirit never comes. So she started doing something that my father used to teach us, auto-suggestion. So she started doing this, today the spirit is not going to come. No spirit will come today. It will not come. After, when father came up, तो मामा, हम तो देख रहे हैं मामा को और नीचे चलो. She said, फिर, did your spirit come today? He said, नहीं, आज पता नहीं क्यों. So Didi and I, we just throw the blankets on our heads and we are giggling inside because we know this is, what this is. It's called auto-suggestion. But so much. The book also gives you, it does give you a geopolitical backdrop in which my story is placed. And because I was born in the year 1952, there was the proximity. Amritsar and Lahore is so close, 30 miles away, 50 kilometers or something away. तो वो बातों में और रेडियो लाहौर चलता रहता था और वो होता ही, मतलब it was a common thing. बात पे लाहौर आ जाता था बीच में, मतलब हर conversation में कहीं ना कहीं जाते थे. लाहौर was always and partition. So when the 1965 war happened, we always thought, as kids we thought, parents के तो इतनी stories हैं, इतने किस्से हुए इनकी life में, they have lived such, मतलब कितना कुछ हुआ है इनके साथ, and we used to be, envious of that. Our lives are so bland. Nothing is happening. War तक भी नहीं हुआ. So we used to feel कि they have stories to tell and we have nothing to talk about. So when the Pakistan war happened in 1965, that's when all the kids got very excited. Trenches बनते थे, sirens होते थे, blackouts होते थे. We were supposed to run into the trench जब siren बजता था. It was like a practice drill होता था. But instead we would, जब वो सावरे जेट्स, हम practice तो कर लेते थे, but when actual सावरे जेट्स आते थे, हम छत पे भागते थे देखने के लिए. वो गया. So and we also had this very, we had this belief. I mean, हम ऐसे समझते थे कि हमारा घर तो मस्जिद के साथ है ना. They are never going to bomb the mosque. So things like that. And my father would, of course, he would switch on the light. He couldn't sleep without reading. Mama would switch it off. क्या करते हो आप? Blackout है, ये वो, you know. And he would, after a while, he would switch it on again. She would again switch it off. So the dome of the mosque, which is like हमारे ऐसे, you know, हम छत पे सोते थे. Dome, उसके ऊपर flash light on off, on off. So the entire mohalla came at our gate and say, प्रोफेसर साहब आपके घर में तो कोई छुपा हुआ, आपका घर इतना ऊपर नीचे है, पता भी ना चलेगा कहाँ छुपा है, एक कोई तो स्पाई है पाकिस्तान का जो छुपा हुआ. It was crazy. No,
वो डोम का जो एक पोर्ट्रेट है, आई थिंक बुक में है, there is a portrait of yours, very beautiful portrait,
Yeah.
and the dome of the mosque is in the background. Is that the?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's very beautiful
Yeah.
picture.
I also write, when I write about Meena Kumari and my fixation with Meena Kumari as a child, I also imagine that she's walking around the dome of the with a book in her hand, burqa aise lapet. I somehow, you know, if you pick up my book when you do, and I want every one of you to read my book, please don't rush through the book. Just go very slowly. Because I want you to not miss out and because I've tried to bring as much of that, you know, that whole thing. Also, there's a chapter in the book called My Imaginary World.
Yeah.
Hana? Yeah, that. I don't know.
I was thinking earlier when you said कि जो सायरन बजती थी तो बाकी लोग नीचे जाते थे and you were trained, but आप लोग ऊपर भाग रहे थे, या फिर आंधी, जब छोटे थे आंधी में लोग नीचे भागते हैं, आप ऊपर भाग रही हैं. So it tells a little bit about you. I know you're very soft spoken girl next door, but
no, I'm far from the girl next door.
Exactly.
Let me tell you. Yeah. वो एक
I
fallacy
don't know
है.
if you watch NH10.
मेरे fans ने बना रखा है कि I must be that girl only जो जिसको चश्मे बदूर में देखा है और फिल्मों में, शायद शुरू की फिल्मों में देखा, but I really don't identify with that. I'm certainly far from.
You should watch NH10. That's what I was saying.
Not that either. You can't see. No. That is a khunkhar aurat. I'm not that.
I wanted to, in that context, I was thinking about it, we talked about that yesterday as well, that जब लड़कियां, टीनेजर लड़कियां घर से भागती हैं, तो what are the reasons? Tell me.
Boys.
या फिर लोग बॉम्बे भागते हैं, कुछ बॉम्बे भागते हैं, लेकिन आपका रीजन कुछ अलग था, and अतरंगी reason how I would call it. I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, God.
Tell us about that.
Brought it. Okay, I ran away from home because I was 13 and I had seen so many movies. Every movie, the songs are shot in Kashmir. So we were forever seeing the Dal Lake, Chinar ke ped, और वो साधना singing, Rajinder Kumar, Arzu, जब जब फूल खिले, कश्मीर की कली, so many movies which came like one after the other, that whole season or those few years. So Kashmir got fixated in my head. I just wanted to go to Kashmir. So I ran away from home. But I mean, I knew कि पठानकोट जाना पड़ता है अमृतसर से, फिर उसके आगे बस मिलती है जो आपको जम्मू और जम्मू के बाद श्रीनगर ले जाती है. That much I knew because we used to go to Kullu Manali always for summers, but my friends used to go to, उनकी families उनको कश्मीर लेके जाती थी. तो this much I knew कि पठानकोट से आगे बस. But पठानकोट पे ही उन्होंने मुझे कान से पकड़ के घर वापस लेके भेज दिया, because they figured that this is a misguided teenager girl, school uniform अंदर पहना हुआ है, ऊपर से चाहे कुछ भी लपेटा हुआ हो, but she's from, you know, but it was crazy to do that. Those times were different. One still came back safe and sound. Yeah, today things are very different, unfortunately, in India. Very, very tricky for girls and, you know, women to पर हम लोग पता नहीं, I think ऊपर वाला is always watching me, over me, you know, so it was.
So I have 3 elder sisters,
Yeah.
and in your book, you know, I've seen how you strongly bonded with your younger brother.
Younger brother, yeah.
Yes. So tell us about.
Both me and Didi. Yeah, we used to dote on him.
Yeah.
But every family does. I mean, एक छोटा भाई आ जाए और क्या मतलब एक खिलौना से हो जाता है.
So tell us about something about Gugu and his passion for patangbazi and Gogi's terrace.
And on Gogi's Terrace. What page is that? Do you have it marked?
Yeah, I have it marked, and it is.
The art of kite flying.
Yes, right here.
कौन सा page?
228, and probably right after Ye Duniya Patang.
हाँ. अच्छा मैं वो जाट वाला भी पढ़ी दूँ? हाँ अच्छा ओके.
वो तो बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग.
The season changed. Spring was in the air. Kites soared in the clear blue sky. Glassy strings crisscrossed overhead. Hall Bazaar was buzzing with villagers streaming into the city for a big mela, wives and children in tow. A man was carrying a baby in yellow on his left shoulder, and on the right a jumbo-sized transistor blaring. The radio sang on, songs of Basant resounded everywhere. Ye duniya patang nit badle hai rang, koi jaane na udane wala kaun hai. I loved a sky filled with kites, and I loved the song, the deeper meaning of the words, the metaphor of kite for the transience of this world, and uncertainty of life and death, which is not in anyone's hands. Happily, I skipped along the pavement, checking my reflection in glass windows when I saw the tall, statuesque figure of a Jat, clad in white lungi kurta and an enormous white turban on his head, striding down the street, his face framed by the red arc of Hallgate. What magnificent statures some of these Jats have. I slowed down my pace, admiring this Greek godlike apparition gliding towards me in slow motion. Then, as we crossed each other, me gazing up at him almost in a trance, the man suddenly spewed out Pan Peak, and there I was, standing in the middle of the bazaar, streaks of red spittle dribbling down my face. Bloody Jat! Disgusted, I darted home in tears and ducked my face under the tap in the Veda, hissing, I will. Didi, watching me from the kitchen, burst out laughing. Somebody actually spat on your face. Yeah. Basant time meant kite flying, and this season my little brother insisted on flying a kite. He was about 5, age, chota tha na. He went up to Gogi's terrace. Now these are the tenants upstairs, and their boy, Gogi, who is my age really, but he and Gugu, my brother, his name was Rohitash actually. 4 annas would get him 4 to 6 kites. 2 rupees and he'd get 1 git door, length of string, at Dwarka's shop. Once Gogi taught him how to string a kite, kite flying became my little brother's new obsession. He managed to find a mentor in Gogi who seemed to be a connoisseur in the art of flying kites. Gogi was my age and Gugu was now 6 years old. Both Gugu and Gogi would go up to the uppermost terrace of Gogi's house, stand on the absolute edge of the rooftop and fly kites. Seeing the 2 boys so dangerously close to the edge, Mama would panic. Gugu, get back. Get away from that edge, you both. Get away at once. The door would run short and Gugu's kite would get cut off by the Mochi's kite, who'd tie little stones on strings and throw them to cut other kites. Aibo. Gugu would get very upset at this and end up putting the entire blame on Gogi. Gogi ne meri guddi cut di. हाँ वो कराती. Okay. Speaking of his kite flying days in Amritsar, Gugu once narrated to me this little incident. One day, when a 10-rupee note dropped out of Mama's cupboard, I quietly took it to Dwarka's shop, he said. अच्छा, इसको छोड़ते हैं. It was a Sardar. हाँ, ठीक, हाँ. I think my younger brother, he was about money. His relationship with money is very crazy. You know, he would राखी आती थी जब तो सारा वो सुबह में सब कर लेते थे रिचुअल रखड़ी बांध देते थे हम दोनों जाकर के दीदी एंड मैं और बड़े क्यूटली बैठा रहता था और बनवा लेता था सब कुछ हो गया थोड़े 2-3 घंटे घूमता था इधर उधर He was always preoccupied. His mind was always on. Mama would make him give us कि चल 5 रुपए दे दे अनु दीदी छोटी नु एंड बड़ी दीदी नु दे दो अच्छा he would give us 5 rupees each as राखी का पैसा Come late afternoon, he would stroll into our study and take out the Rakhi and say, Didi, here's your Rakhi. Now give me back.
So he was...
he told me, you didn't write that, Didi, did you? I said, yeah, I did.
So your father also had elder sisters?
He had 5 sisters.
5 sisters. And your brother was not like his father? Because your father was very quiet.
Yeah, he was.
But your brother will...
yeah, he was a riot. He was a riot. Yeah. There was, you tell me.
That's okay. Go ahead.
नहीं वो पहले एक था chapter, but I'll come back to that.
I wanted you to...
Let's open,
Yeah. Sure. I just
Is
wanted
there-
a little bit reference to your school days. You had, especially Miss Hussain.
Oh yes, Miss Hussain. Yeah. Do we have a marking for that?
No, I think maybe if you can talk. We'll talk about that a little bit.
No, I like, acha, okay. Yeah. School days, I went to Sacred Heart Convent in Amritsar. And at that time, during the late 50s and 60s, all of 60s, we had nuns from the Belgian congregation. So they were all these European nuns. There were hardly any Indian nuns there. There was one Sister Rita. She was the only Anglo-Indian nun in our school at that time. And I used to be very fascinated with nuns because of their habits, and summer mein all white, and then suddenly one day as the winter comes they turn out early in the morning in total black, and I used to be very fascinated with all that. The church, See, we had a very eclectic kind of upbringing, We were an Arya Samaji family, not believing in Murti Puja, no temple going, just very simple, havan hota tha ghar mein. And we were right, the mosque was, we were overlooking the mosque, or the mosque was overlooking us. So वहाँ पे 5 वक्त की नमाज भी होती थी. पहले 10 साल तो कुछ नहीं था. 47 से लेके 57, there was nothing. It was a deserted mosque. But we were okay with the namaz. And then we went to the Catholic school and we were going to church. So we were okay with that also. And I mean, one was, though the partition was all the time being referred to, and the riots were being referred to, still, I think we somehow grew up without any religious grudges. It was very open. It was kind of okay. You have your namaz and we have our havan, and quietly आप loudspeaker लगा लेते हो, हम वहीं घर के courtyard में कर लेते हैं, तो कुछ मतलब problem नहीं था कभी भी. So this was, I think it's a lot to do with my parents. My mother grew up in a Buddhist atmosphere in Burma. So वो भी हमें सुनने में मिलता था. So it was a nice medley of different cultures and different ways of everything is okay. I'm okay, you are okay. That kind of a thing. Yeah.
Do you want to ask? last talk about Diwali, or do you want to open?
Blue Frog Fiasco?
Yeah, because it's
A
Diwali.
story.
It's
Yeah,
just-
yeah, I would. Yeah, because it's we are running into Diwali now. I can read
The
something.
fiasco.
I can read again one of my. कौन सा पेज है?
142, 141.
दिवाली में हमेशा नए कपड़े मिलते थे. Mama would make. We always wore all the pictures, most of all the pictures of childhood. Didi and I are wearing identical frocks. सभी तस्वीरों में मैं तो सोचती थी कि मामा कहती तो हैं, but when I really started hunting and I knew कि वो सारे ही सभी हम लोगों को एक जैसे frocks पहनाती थी. Mama would stitch also herself. She was very good at that. So I'm talking here about one particular दिवाली नाइट. कैसे हम लोग दिवाली के दिन वो रेलिंग पे छत का जो रेलिंग होता है, बैनिस्टर जो होता है, उसके ऊपर कैंडल्स वैक्स को मेल्ट करके फिर कैंडल उसमें ऐसे रख देते थे, और दोज कैंडल्स वी वुड लाइट एंड देन आई वुड रन अप अर्ली मॉर्निंग to pick the wax, and then those different colored wax की अजीब अजीब shapes होती थी, जिसको केक टाइप उसको निकाल के फिर मैं बॉक्स में भर के रखती थी. So one Diwali night was particularly eventful. I would later remember it as the blue frock fiasco. I must have been about 7 years old then. In preparation for Diwali that year, Mama had cut out from Women in Home a beautiful picture of 2 little girls wearing identical frocks. The frocks were a rich, deep blue with gathers at the waist. Dainty white lace frills hung off the edges of the collars and sleeves. Mama wanted the exact same blue frock stitched for Didi and me for this Diwali. She had a very fine piece of white muslin lying in the wooden almirah, which she decided to get dyed a brilliant blue. The muslin was pulled out from the cupboard one afternoon and taken to the rangwala, who dyed the same blue. Mama carried the magazine with her to show Color Singh. I used to in my head call him Color Singh. रंग वाला था ना, तो उसका कोई नाम तो हमें जानते नहीं थे. मेरे सब बचपन में मैंने सबको नाम दिए हुए थे. बफलोज के भी नाम थे. जो तबेला था सामने, कोई चाली, कोई ब्राउनी, ऐसे बफलोज के भी नाम थे. गंगो, इस तरह. To show Color Singh exactly what she wanted. As blue as this, she told him, nothing less. It's called Prussian blue. My mother being a painter, no, she thought Color Singh is going to understand ki Prussian blue. Yes, yes, he assured her. Then the old Sardar tailor from across the house was called in. I want the exact same pattern, she said, placing the magazine in front of him. The old man got down to work immediately, Diwali being just a day away. The day of Diwali, I was very excited. Every now and then I'd run to the thada to check if the frocks were ready. Day turned to evening, and evening came to be night. But the frocks did not get stitched on time. Though the darzi stayed up till late working on them, little blue strips scattered all around him. Both Didi and I waited. I remember we didn't light up patakhas that year. We simply waited on the thada for the tailor to finish sewing on the hooks and buttons and hemming the sleeves and collars so that we could get to wear our new frocks before the night was over. I walked up to the terrace and leaned over the edge, looking down at the mochi dwellings. How beautiful their homes appeared, lit with oil lamps, the sound of their nightly dholak more rigorous, the singing more intense. The mud houses glowed with freshly coated walls and the white powder motifs painted on the thresholds and around windows. The scene looked like it was out of a picture book. Yet, despite the lamps and the rangoli and the music, there was something very sad about this Diwali night. On our terrace, we had not lit the candles. As the night wore on, the festivity around us began to fade. The firecrackers that had lit up the sky a while ago, creating a fantastic backdrop for the white minarets of the mosque, had dwindled to a handful of flashes here and there. Children around the neighborhood had finished bursting the last of their crackers for the night and were going back inside their homes. This was the quietest Diwali for us girls. Only one yellow bulb still glowed. The old Sardar Darzi sitting on his wooden stool, working away in his modest establishment, giving the finishing touches to our frocks. He was the last shop still open in the street. Both Didi and I were quiet. Mama stood at the thada with us, sharing our disappointment. All the iron and wooden shutters of shops and streets had clanked down, a finale to the Diwali night. We came back inside the house, time now to change into our pajamas and get into bed. This Diwali night was gone from our lives uncelebrated. Suddenly, there was a knock on the phatak. Without pausing to think, I ran to open the main door. I perched on my toes to push up the iron latch so that the small gate would be released open quickly. In my heart I knew whoever was knocking on my door at this hour could only be God sent. Sure enough, there he was, the old Sardar Darzi, standing in the dark, his face frayed and tilted to one side, both his arms stretched out. My eyes lit up at what I saw. Our very own Messiah, his grey beard and white turban glowing in the light of the street lamp. The Savior himself. In his hands he held 2 hangers on which hung frocks of the most brilliant blue I'd ever seen. The old tailor's face had a faint smile of regret and benediction at the same time. I looked at the frocks and then at him. Didi came up behind me. There we were, 2 little girls, misty-eyed, gaping at the old man who stood Jesus-like, blue color dripping from his palms. Mama quickly changed us back from the pajamas into our new blue frocks. That Diwali night, we were the last 2 little girls up on a terrace, lighting firecrackers, invoking the gods, illuminating the dark skies. Thank you, thank you.
So I think we can go on and on, but you have a flight.
Yeah, we need to.
So we need to now.
I would like to, so many people, what childhood memories does it bring to you? Let's just chat about, childhood a bit.
So there is a mic with Manisha ji, and I think, just.
Yeah, over there in the back.
And then, and then.
Then in the back, and then him.
Hi, my name is Tahira, and Tahira Ahmed Mitu, and I'm from Bangladesh.
Okay.
And I'm Muslim, and your story and my story, the mother side is similar. My mom was from Burma.
Oh, really?
And it's a long story, so they came after World War II.
Yeah.
They came to Bangladesh, but the whole family been in the war, that a bomb blast. So all the families died. From my mom's side, So there were only 3 kids that were here in Bangladesh, and then that's, goes on. It's just sad story, but that's one of the reasons that I came today. I read a little bit about the book, and I thought that it was very intriguing story, and I wanted to share that with you as well. And it's a good job. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, in the back.
दीप्ति जी नमस्ते।
नमस्ते जी।
मुझे आपकी बातें सुन के बहुत आनंद आ रहा है।
Thank you so much.
How am I relating to you? My mom is an artist. Both my parents are writers. और मैं भी घर से भागी हुई हूँ। और मैं यहाँ
बॉम्बे
नहीं यहाँ।
अच्छा यहाँ। ठीक है।
मैं आपसे पूछना चाह रही थी कि मैं भी पेंट करती हूँ, लिखती हूँ कि जब मैं उन चीज़ों से सिक हो जाती हूँ तो मैं कुछ और करती हूँ। आपका नॉन क्रिएटिव रिलीज क्या है? या कुछ है?
कैसे? मतलब
I feel creative exhaustion.
Yes, I walk a lot, I trek. I go off
Okay.
There are regions in Ladakh,
Yeah.
which are my favorite, and I go off. I just take a flight, and I land up in Leh in the middle of the winter, and then I'm all bundled up, and I'm walking. और moral support के लिए कोई छोटा 8-9 साल का बच्चा उसको साथ ले लेती हूँ, and then I walk. But yeah, that is for me, going into the wilderness is never and treks and safaris are never really adventure holidays. They're always contemplative, trying to connect with myself,
Yeah.
trying to hear my own head.
Yeah.
And that's how I take my walks and my treks and my hikes. That's
Yeah.
how I
I was tiny question. So when you write, there's a lot of truth to what you're writing.
Yeah.
But is there embellishment? Have you gone into details and made up stuff?
No, I write the way I remember.
Okay.
And my memory of my childhood is never going to, I will never have an equal
Okay.
to this. Because जिस तरह से मुझे childhood याद है, वैसे बाकी का नहीं याद. I will not be able to do justice to the rest of my life the way because ये शुरू से I have always kept revisiting my childhood, and of course memory is such a thing. The earlier the memory comes from, the more clearly you remember it.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's beautiful. If that's the level at which you remember, it's amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Next.
Deepti ji, namaste. It's great to
Namaste.
see you in person.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm happy that Khushbudar Jagwala Chamko girl who was going door to door, I feel blessed that I got chance to see the girl.
No, this is not Chamko girl. This is the real.
You should definitely watch Anishtin.
So my question is about the picture on the book. What's so special? And why
The
you chose
picture on
this?
the book,
Yes.
this picture.
Yes.
I'm 16, that is special.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. The book has my mother's painting in the back, the mosque and the छत जहाँ पे हम सोते थे. ये हमारा घर की छत है और ये मस्जिद है और यहाँ सोते थे तो कभी बादल मिनरेट्स के पीछे चांद ये सब every night. So you can't really grow up to be a normal practical kind of a person. You are slightly थोड़ा ज़मीन से 1.5 इंच ऊपर. Yeah.
Hi Deepti ji, welcome back to Boston. So good to have you back.
Thank
Obviously, I've had the pleasure of reading the book. So obviously, you leave it's from till you're 18 years old.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think because we've lived through your journey, obviously, next is what next? So are you writing another book that's going to take us through from that point, obviously, to your entire film journey?
I don't know if it's going to be so chronological because the way I remember this, I would definitely like to write about my experiences in the film through my films. Definitely, I would like to write about that, but I don't know how much. I will have lots of notes to go back to, and I will be able to share a lot of that also. I hope to, but I also hope to write other things. There are about 4 or 5 books in my laptop.
Because the one question
किसी एक को खत्म करना है पहले.
Gee, because you take the readers through your journey and through your life and through your parents.
Yeah.
The one instinct reaction is like, what did your parents think when you actually told them you were going to be an actor, and how did that
मैं लिखूंगी ज़रूर. Yeah.
Roles that you have liked.
No, I will write about my journey through cinema. Definitely, I will do that, yeah. But I don't promise that will be the immediate next book. That's the only thing, yeah. Yes.
Just a simple question. Even though you look like a very mellow person, but as a teenager, you did have a gang of girls taking care of the boys who misbehaved in bus and other places.
Yeah,
Is a chapter on that? If you can.
Yes, the Elbow Crusade.
Any,
Are you talking about the chapter in my book?
Yeah.
The Elbow Crusade. Yeah. You know, I mean, girls have to fight eve teasing, right? And it's I've written the chapter with a little tongue-in-cheek, but it was, and the way I remember it, it was much, it was not at all something that we can make light of.
Right.
The way, yeah, it was very ugly. You know, the way, I don't want to specify saying the men from the north or the men from the south and other things, but हमारे experience में तो men from the north ही था ना, तो it was not nice.
Yeah.
The way they looked at you, the way they tried to feel you, I mean, it was not nice. Whether you're in a bus or even in the Golden Temple में जो queue लगी होती है जब जाते हैं अंदर, I mean, if people can think of, not nice.
One more, I agree with your
Yeah.
chapter on the 65 war.
Yeah.
You lived through it as if it was a real movie.
Yes.
We in Mumbai or Bombay actually were a target number one, and we
Yeah.
felt a similar one, but we didn't experience firsthand. That is described in your chapters. Really worth reading. Looks like you're watching a movie there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, in the back here. 1 second. No, just, we've been seeing that hand for a long time. After that we'll come.
नमस्ते दीप्ति जी. मेरा आपसे एक क्विक क्वेश्चन था कि so your father was an author. He wrote some very heavy topics like reincarnation and he has some great works of writing. Did you ever have any editorial inputs for his work? And while he was with you, did he ever know that you were writing a book or you were doing some writing? Did he ever have any editorial inputs on your work?
No, not inputs, because I was writing poetry and he was writing about the psyche of the immigrants. He was doing research, major research work about the phenomena of migration. This displacement we were talking about, whether out of choice or out of no choice. But people on this earth, people in this world have moved, gone across the globe to find a new life, to start somewhere else, and he wanted to understand what is this phenomena. Why is the human being so curious to give up what is secure and there for him, and try to make a life somewhere else, in another land, in another. That was his major work. It was very academic work. I don't have a picture of that. I'd carry a little photograph of the book cover. It's called Striped Zebra, The Immigrant's Psyche. It's on, how can I say, yeah. His lectures on karma and reincarnation are on YouTube. You can hear those lectures. But he was doing very academic work, and that was his main body of, that was 15 years of research, and then he came up with that book. So I didn't, of course he read my poetry, and he was a bit, he said that, he knew that I was writing this book because I've been writing this book forever. My parents were alive at that time. मैं अपना वो टेप रिकॉर्डर होता था मेरे पास, वो मैं लेकर के उनके सामने बैठ जाती थी. मामा टेल मी what happened, tell me again, थोड़ा और डिटेल में बताओ, थोड़ा और. So they both had talked to me extensively about their memories, their lives, and given me some details. So I was cross-checking everything. तो उनको पता था कि ये किताब मैं लिख रही हूँ. Yeah. They gave me a lot of themselves. They have given me a lot to this book.
So before we move to next question, we'll take two more questions because.
वहीं से ना? हाँ. Yes, I have to go.
आपने बोला था उनको.
I have a flight.
Yeah, so इनके बाद एक question हम और लेंगे, and then we will.
We'll wrap. Let's do that. One question.
Okay. Thank you, Deepti ji, for a country called childhood. Yes. So it's definitely very perceptive, very thoughtful, very intense, and it resonates with the hidden recesses of a mind. And I know that's a window to a sensitive soul like you that has experienced life beyond cinema. And I know you intended this book to be more of a screenplay, and we walked...
more like a novel.
Exactly.
But just to recreate things. Yeah.
Right. You recreated those memories, and we walked through the corridors of that memory with you. So thank you so much for allowing us to do that.
Thank you.
I firmly believe in destiny. I believe in serendipities. I believe that everything happens for a reason, Deepti ji. So do you think that all the childhood experiences that you have had, all the relationships that you have had, or the family that you were born in, or the place that you visited, like Jallianwala Bagh, where you had you felt the brutality of the incident, and that shook you to the core, and then you ended up acting in a movie called Jallianwala Bagh in Mumbai.
My first film.
Exactly. And then you also got the first, your Best Actress Award by Devika Rani, who was your mother's favorite.
Yes.
So do you think that the universe was preparing you for what's going to unfold for you in the future? It was preparing you for the world of cinema?
Yeah, there's, there is serendipity everywhere. You just got to kind of recognize it. When you think about it, it is there. Little magic things happen, all the time, and we just kind of, but hota hai, there is a connect. My father knew Rorik, and Devika Rani was married to Rorik's son. So there are these little connects everywhere. I just had at the Rorik Museum in Nagar, they just had my book launch, and I was there just last week. I agree. Thank you so much for receiving my book this wholeheartedly. You've been reading about it also. And
one last question.
I may not have time to sign the books. We'll have to leave right now.
I think we can do it.
Okay.
One last question, and then we quickly do it.
So creativity bonds...
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So creativity bonds, people together as a family.
Yeah.
But when you're a teenager, because I have 2 teen boys, it's very difficult. So your father was a creative person, your mother was a creative person, those genes were in you.
Yeah.
Did you find yourself looking up to them, as a creative person?
Yes,
or
absolutely.
Were you in your own world as a teenager?
No, I was groomed by, whatever I am today is sum total of my mother and my father. They have had a huge influence on me, huge influence. My mother, certainly, though she objected to my coming into movies, but, as a creative person, she's the one who was my first teacher in painting. She'd make me sit on the dining table and sketch. And my father's major influence. These are my 2 gurus. I don't have gurus in life. My parents, my mama and my piti, my 2 gurus, always been.
Thank you, everyone.